Ron Roberts.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and an honour to follow the honourable gentleman from New Forest East, who made a very, very powerful speech indeed. I'm delighted to be called to speak in this extremely important debate, which for me, Mr Deputy Speaker, is all about respect. It's about respect of this House, respect of its decisions, its processes, and respect of its committees. I have an awful lot to cover, and with all due respect to the House and to members, I won't take any interventions, I'm afraid. Mr Deputy Speaker, in the early morning of the 13th of December 2019, I, along with just over 100 ordinary people on this side of the aisle, and a few from the other side as well, were, in the majority of cases, taken from our ordinary lives and ordered to report with 2 days' notice to Westminster. I can remember being completely overawed in many respects, but above all of the emotions I felt, there were two overwhelming feelings, those of duty and respect. Respect for the place, the institutions of Parliament, the legacy, and the unyielding burden of responsibility to uphold the finest traditions of public service. Some will say, quite reasonably, that I have failed to live up to those traditions. Others will disagree. I'll speak more about that later, but suffice it to say, I felt a huge weight of expectation to serve the community in which I grew up, and which had done me the honour of sending me to this place and speak on their behalf. I still feel it today. I don't make all the right decisions, Mr Deputy Speaker. I defy you to show me anyone who does, but I try my very best to do as good a job as I can, to help as many people as I can, and within those efforts, I'm able to make some amends for any mistakes that I may have made and work in the best traditions of this House. During my time here, I've met some quite amazing people. I recall one of the first people I met in the Park Plaza where we were all initially encamped was the Honourable Member for Ashfield. Remarkable man. I consider him a friend and I hope he'd return the sentiment. I don't think it'll come as a surprise to anyone to know that my honourable friend has a particular style, a particular turn of phrase that doesn't always land well with some. I think it might be because he tells the unvarnished truth about things, but to this day he gets abused by certain elements of the media and members of the opposition for his opinions and views, shouted at across the chamber every time he gets to his feet. There's a lack of respect. Many members have talked about it today. We sometimes lack respect for each other, and for a lack of respect for an elected MP who, if I'm any judge, will be the member for Ashfield long after most of the occupants of these benches have been sent on their way. I've met here some lifelong friends. I've met some people who I would, quite frankly, never get tired of seeing locked in a set of stocks and pelted with rotten vegetables. Not all of the friends are on this side. Not all of the stocks-worthy individuals are on the other. But regardless of any personal feelings that I may have for anyone, the most important thing has been, as far as I'm concerned, to treat people in this place with respect, and at the very least until they have proven that they deserve no such consideration. The first day that I reported for duty here, I remember being struck by things that most normal people would probably feel. The history, the thought of all of the people who've walked these halls before us, the giants of British politics. I hoped that my colleagues and I would all be able to live up to their legacies as we tried our best to shape the future for our country. Sad as some people found it, I tried my best to become an expert on procedure. Well, as much of an expert as I could anyway, nothing like the amazing depth of knowledge that the House and committee clerks demonstrate on a daily basis, but enough so that I didn't make any foolish mistakes, didn't say the wrong thing in the wrong place, didn't do anything to embarrass myself or my party, but most importantly, not to embarrass the House. I'm a firm believer that this place is amazing, it is special, and it should be respected and defended by every member until we're no longer members, and even then still afterwards. Those closest to me have told me at various times over the past couple of years to walk away when the arduous nature of this job was becoming too much. Get out of that toxic place, they said. We've heard members recently who've said that they won't be standing in the next election. Some of them use those very words. But it's not true. It isn't a toxic place. It's an amazing place full of history, majesty, responsibility and duty. Sadly, It's made toxic by some of its inhabitants and the constant politicians versus the people narrative that rains down on the public from every possible news media outlet. Some from the right, some from the left, but all of them consistent in their position that politicians are not to be trusted of whichever political affiliation. I believe it's one of the most damaging things currently in our society, this constant drive by the media to try to make politicians the enemies of the people. Just this weekend, I saw one particularly prominent newspaper declaring significant conflicts of interest because MPs hold huge shareholdings in particular companies. Some of the shareholdings were part of a blind trust that the beneficiaries had no means of controlling or even knowing about. Some of the shareholdings were huge sums, like £2.69 in Sainsbury's shares, or a holding of £4.36 in Lloyds Banking Group. Some of the more notable amounts were accentuated by an asterisk denoting shares held by a close family member, as if being related to an MP means that you're somehow barred from investing your money. The whole thing, just another example of the attempts by certain sections of the media to paint us all as the enemy, with the hope that the mere hint of impropriety and an inflammatory headline will be enough for clicks. Because it's not about selling papers anymore, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's now about clicks. Imagine the disappointment of the reader who clicked on the salacious headline, "Exclusive. Shares held in secret by scores of MPs raise questions about vested interests," only to read that an honourable member has got £4.82 invested with NatWest. But it's another headline, another nail in the coffin of the narrative that the people who come to work in this place are always trying to pull a fast one, always worthy of disdain, always there to be abused. The reality is, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that in my very limited experience, the vast majority of people come to this House to do good things. They work damn hard and in the main do an excellent job as Members of Parliament in what have been, over the past couple of years, some of the most trying times in modern British political history. But some of the things that have happened over the past few months have left me sad, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I am a traditionalist. I believe that these things matter. Things like respect for the House and its processes. Without that, this place loses some of its legitimacy. And in an environment I just described, where there's a constant search for reasons to write negatively about us and this place, we don't need to commit these acts of internal damage as well. There are enough people out there willing and eager to tear us down. Let's not do it to ourselves as well. On the 21st of April 2022, the House debated for about 5 hours a motion to open an inquiry of the Committee of Privileges into whether the conduct of the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson amounted to a contempt of the House. At the end of the debate, the motion was put and carried with no dissenting voices. Following the withdrawal by the previous chair from chairing the inquiry, the Right Honourable Lady, the member for Camberwell and Peckham, was tabled by the government and approved by the whole House in June 2022 with no dissenting voices, quite rightly. I'm not going to restate the contents of this special report, but I've listened carefully to the arguments made on both sides. The argument for freedom of speech is powerful indeed. We live in a society in which freedom of speech is absolutely crucial, especially here. Parliamentarians must be allowed to say what they want to say without fear of reprisal. And we can, in this place. There's a reason that parliamentary privilege doesn't extend past those doors. It's because it is a privilege. Freedom of speech is an important right, but it's not an absolute right. With freedom comes responsibility. And in my view, in this type of situation, having established the inquiry without dissent, appointed the chair without dissent, appointed members without dissent, members have then lost the right to criticise later. It's the same principle as when I was a general member of the public a few years ago and debating an issue of politics. I'd say to someone, well, how did you vote in the last election? And they say, oh, well, I didn't vote, I didn't bother. Well, you don't get to criticise then. The same holds true here. Members had the opportunity to voice their concerns and object, and they did not. It shouldn't be then open to members to impugn the reputation of the committee of the people who have been chosen to serve. They were put in place to do a job. 7 members, 4 Conservative, 2 from Labour and 1 from the SNP. The longest-serving female MP in the House and the King's Council. 2 members who've been awarded knighthoods for their long and meritorious service to this place. 1 who is a distinguished magistrate and an impartial upholder of the law. I'm sure the others were equally noteworthy, but I don't know them so well. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I feel somewhat uniquely placed to comment on this subject, as I've been investigated, found to have transgressed and been sanctioned by a process of this House. Yet, out of respect for this place, I have remained silent. In May 2021, I was found to have broken the House's sexual misconduct policy following a lengthy investigation and was suspended from the service of this House. I believed at the time the judgment was wrong. That remains my belief. I've been told a number of times that I can't say anything about the situation which deviates from that which is in the report, which I believe to be in error. And so, out of respect for the House and its processes, at significant personal cost, I have said nothing, so as not to bring myself, the process, or the House into disrepute. I feel comfortable only in saying that I believe it to be in error, as this is relatively self-evident given that I appealed the decision in the first place. But other than saying that the judgment was wrong, I make no further comment on the situation out of respect for the processes of this House. When I subsequently received death threats and demands for an explanation, I told them nothing out of respect for the processes of this House. When people I thought were friends in this place averted their eyes or turned away when I bumped into them in the corridor and said hello, I said nothing out of respect for processes of this House. When my own party abandoned me and lied to my face, just at the point when I was most in need of their help, I said nothing out of respect for the processes of this House. When week after week, Shadow Leader of the House, the member for Bristol West, stood at the dispatch box and called for me to resign, I said nothing out of respect for the House. When I received an email to say that she was going to refer to me again at the dispatch box on the 8th of July 2021, a time when I was at my lowest point and in need of assistance, I replied to that email. I respectfully asked that she not raise that situation again almost 2 months down the line, as I'd served my sanction in continually raising the point at every turn in order to inflame the situation was having an extremely detrimental effect on my mental health. She ignored my request and brought it up anyway, as well as several more times, with the knowledge that it was causing significant distress. Had this been the case anywhere other than in this chamber, it would have quite rightly, easily fit the criteria for the House's definition of bullying, but in this room, she got a free pass. I said nothing, only out of respect for the processes of this House. When at one particularly low point I found myself balanced on the handrail of Westminster Bridge, I found the will to step backwards instead of forwards and seek help. A good friend from these benches intervened, and I am in his debt. I've been in counselling for over a year, and probably, Mr Deputy Speaker, a good point to mention the amazing Parliamentary Health and Wellbeing team, and one individual on that team in particular, without whom I would be in a very different place. We discussed so many aspects of my life in the past and the past couple of years' events. The therapy relationship is a little bit like a confession, a private room where I could say what I wanted to and unburden myself of the difficulties being faced, but couldn't say anywhere else. And I had so much to say. But publicly, I said nothing out of respect for the processes of this House. When I stood up to ask a question at PMQs with friends sitting in the gallery, Mr Deputy Speaker, and a member of the Labour front bench shouted, "You can sit the F down," I said nothing out of respect for the processes of this House. And now it continues, Mr Deputy Speaker. There are major local events that I've been fighting against in my constituency, nationally significant and newsworthy issues. BBC Wales refused to interview me about them because I've always refused to go on the record and talk about my case. It means I'm not as able as I otherwise would to present the views of my communities on this important matter, but I will not talk about it out of respect for the processes of this House. If, after all that, I can get through my days and do my job to the best of my abilities without speaking out and without undermining the processes of this House on something that has personally affected me so profoundly, I find it really difficult when others, particularly those others who have historically stood in this place and purported to champion the best traditions, undermine it, discredit it and abuse it. I draw my remarks to an end. I wrote a personal handwritten note to every member of the committee recently to thank them for their service. In extremely difficult circumstances, I thank them again verbally now. I hope that they're not still suffering any after effects stemming from that service, and I hope that honourable and right honourable members from all sides of the House reflect on this, hopefully concluding melodrama, and consider that this House, its committees, and the whole Institute of Parliament is deserving of a lot more respect than it currently receives.